Biden's remarks in Poland, where he renewed the United States' commitment to Ukraine and our NATO allies. The speech comes almost a year since Russia invaded Ukraine, and we heard President Biden say that at that time, the world was bracing for the fall of Kyiv. The president says, well, I just came from visiting Kyiv, and I can report Kyiv stands strong, Kyiv stands proud, it stands tall, and most importantly, it stands free. The president also said the U.S. will continue to stand with Ukraine no matter what, and also mentioned Vladimir Putin by name several times, saying at one point that he thought autocrats like himself were tough and that leaders of democracy were soft. And then he met the iron will of America and the nations everywhere that refused to accept a world governed by fear and force. The president later said that appetites of an autocrat can't be appeased, they must be opposed, and saying autocrats only understand one word: no. No, you will not take my country. No, you will not take my freedom. No, you will not take my future. The message in many ways was a message to the people there in Poland, a message to the people of Ukraine, a message to people all throughout the world, and certainly President Biden today was trying to send a message to Vladimir Putin. I want to bring in our senior correspondent, Mary Bruce, who's there in Poland at the presentation. Mary, how was this received there in the crowd?
I have to say, it was surprising to hear him calling out Vladimir Putin so directly and so many times, especially because, as you know, that is something that Vladimir Putin did not do this morning in his remarks. He didn't mention Biden by name. You know, this is an interesting crowd. I have to say, it is notably different from the president's speech that he gave here a year ago. Of course, drastically different circumstances. That was a very somber, subdued, stark tone. Of course, Russia had just invaded. The world was really in shock. This was far more celebratory of an event. The president even walking out to that song, Freedom. And that is the point, right, that the president is trying to make here as he rallies allies, that even the fact that he's able to give a speech like this, the fact that he was able to visit Kyiv yesterday was something that was simply unthinkable a year ago, and that in and of itself sends a powerful message to Vladimir Putin, that his hopes that this war, this invasion would somehow splinter the West, divide the free world, were simply not true. In fact, the opposite, Biden says, has come true, that the West is more united, that the U.S. and their allies stand stronger now than ever before. And the president is urging all of these allies to continue to stand together, because he says that is what it's going to take for this war to ultimately come to an end. And so, yes, it was a powerful message to our allies, to the people of Poland, but especially to Vladimir Putin.
Mary, how much of this is also a message to the American people? We've heard lately that polls are showing some interest in supporting Ukraine is starting to wane, particularly among some in the Republican Party. So was this as much a message to his own people from President Biden?
I think that's absolutely right. This was also an effort to shore up support back home, as we have seen interest in the war starting to cool amongst Americans. Look, the president arguing that obviously this is about more than just Ukraine. This is about the strength of democracy against autocracies. This is about the West coming together to stand up for our values and what we believe in as a people. And you have seen some Republicans, some arguing that the U.S. shouldn't be giving Ukraine a blank check. That is an argument, of course, that this White House has rejected, even as they are announcing even more aid. The president yesterday announcing $400 million in more military aid. But the White House also notes, look, Ukraine isn't getting everything they have asked for here. They certainly have requests that the White House is refusing to fill. But the president making it very clear, the U.S.'s support for Ukraine is unwavering. This is a fight worth fighting, and one that we are going to continue to play a very prominent role in.
And I want to bring in our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, into this conversation as well. Ian, this was a very forceful tone from President Biden. How impactful is that, not only in and of itself, but also after this surprise visit to Ukraine?
I think it's very impactful. I mean, what I was struck by really was the tone as well as the content of what President Biden had to say today, and juxtaposed with what we heard from President Putin. I mean, it was 36 years ago that Ronald Reagan stood at the Berlin Wall imploring President Gorbachev at the time to tear it down. I mean, this speech seemed to have similar ambitions. It seemed to have reminiscent tones of a Cold War era, especially when you heard what President Putin had to say today about blaming so many ills at America's doorstep, that America was responsible for the war in Ukraine, as well as a number of other calumnies around the world. The two worldviews couldn't be more starkly opposed. But I think the signaling to Ukrainians is very important. I think possibly more important is the signalling to the allies and to the populations who essentially have to bankroll the allocation of weapons and funds that are going to Ukraine. You know, he made it very clear that this is not going to be over very soon, that there are going to be dark days ahead, but that the battle here is about more than just Ukraine. It's also about the future for democracy in the West, in America, that it will impact everybody's children and grandchildren, their children and grandchildren. In other words, it's a struggle of the ages, and that's why, for me, I think this is an historic moment. I think the visit to Kyiv was historic, a very bold statement, and we'll just have to wait and see how willing the Allies are to stand tall and to stand strong behind Ukraine for months, possibly years ahead.
And I want to bring in our chief foreign affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz, for more on that note, Ian. Martha, it's clear the president was trying to emphasize the gravity that Ian's talking about, that this isn't just about Ukraine. It's not just about the United States. It's not even just about the NATO allies. So what did you make of the president's tone, especially having this speech follow Vladimir Putin's speech earlier today?
Well, he actually addressed Putin, some of the things Putin actually said to him in his speech. He fired back on that. So just like Ian and Mary, I think the most surprising thing was exactly how provocative Joe Biden was, how he tried to provoke Vladimir Putin again and again and again. But the tone, and Ian, I here in Warsaw, we really feel it. You feel it. He is just down the road here giving that speech, and we could hear some of the thunderous applause and the meaning and the history. You can truly feel it here in Warsaw, Poland, that the president talked about not just this fight, but the fight for the future of the planet, if you will. I do think President Biden made it very clear this war is going to last for a long time. We don't know how it's going to end. You cannot predict how this is going to end. Will they eventually negotiate a peace? Will Ukraine win this war? It's very difficult to see that happening, and it's very, very difficult to see that happening anytime soon. And I think everybody should remember, too, and no one knows this better than Ian, the loss in Ukraine. Ian has seen it so many times up close. Hundreds of thousands of casualties, hundreds of thousands of deaths. And these are civilians who go out every day and fight for their country. And I know President Biden was sending a message to them, too. Keep going. What you've done is worth it.
Yeah, tragedy, no doubt, no matter how this ends. Martha Raddatz, Ian Pannell, Mary Bruce, thank you all.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.